This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth. Support A Rood Awakening International today.
Naysayers often scoff at biblical stories, saying that there is no proof that the biblical characters actually existed or that these stories ever happened. But what happens when modern science actually ends up proving those biblical stories? We're going to find out tonight with Andrew Jones and friends, because it's the end of the sixth day, the sun is set, and this is Shabbat Night Live. Well, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. Welcome to Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood. And tonight, Michael invites a very special guest, Andrew Jones and friends are going to talk more about Noah's Ark. Yes, there's some brand new discovery, some brand new information to bring you about proof that Noah's Ark is actually in existence, and we can actually tell you where. So that is coming up today, the very, very exciting stuff. And also, it is the second weekend on the astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar, the month of the Aviv, that is. And there you see it on your screen. And we have Passover coming up this weekend. Now, of course, last month we celebrated Passover here in Charlotte, North Carolina with 360 of our closest friends. And now you get to celebrate Passover with your friends on the actual day of Passover. So we pray that you would enjoy that as well. Now, we're also going to talk about the Ambassador Club and some other things regarding our Passover event with the Ambassador Club Liaison Coordinator, Angie Clark. Angie, welcome to Shabbat Night Live.
Thank you, Scott. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. So you're the liaison, the coordinator. I don't know what to call you because you do everything with the Ambassador Club.
Well, you know, I love our ambassadors. They're family. And like I told them at our Passover
at our event, yeah.
Reception. Sorry, couldn't think of it. They have allowed me into their lives. I mean, I know so much about these people, and even their families, their woes, their testimonies, just everything that a family shares, they share with me, and I'm just honored to be part of that.
You know, we were really surprised at this event. We had a smaller event this time. Last year we had something like 800 folks, and this time it was 360 because we had a different facility, which actually kind of turned out to be really nice. We had people raise their hands as to how many people were first-time ambassadors, and there were a lot of them.
I would say 3/4 of the people there were ambassadors.
What do you think the reason was that for? It just people are excited about the ministry and they're hopping on board?
They know what we're doing. We are getting the word out to the nations, and that is the cry of our Messiah's heart, is to get the word out so he can come back. And so that's what they do. I like to call them our missionaries. That's what I like to refer to them as, because they are, and they don't expect anything in return except souls. And so that is the heartbeat of our ambassadors.
Right. Now, the Ambassador Club, the premise of that is a gift to the ministry, $100 or more a month.
Correct.
But now that's a great thing for us to have, and we really appreciate our ambassadors. But it's more than that.
Absolutely.
The gift is one thing, but to be an ambassador of the truth, they really take that to heart.
They do.
And go and spread it around their neighborhood, anywhere they are, in a lineup somewhere. And that's just the really great thing about our ambassadors, that they are totally on board with sharing with folks what the truth is and what people have been missing out on their whole lives.
That's correct. That's their heartbeat, is to get the word out, as I said. And, you know, we have the little Red Sea business cards, Red Sea Crossing business cards. And there's so many people who come up with amazing ways to pass these out. There's one girl, she has literally started fellowships just by passing those out. She'll call me every week with a testimony, and it's just amazing. I love, thank you, Jennifer. We love you. And so we're good.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, starting with fellowships, last week we talked with David Robinson about Aviv fellowships. And a lot of our ambassadors, I think, are those ones who are spearheading the Aviv fellowships.
They are. Yeah.
Yeah. And those are popping up all over the place as well, more and more every day. And one of the most important things I think an ambassador can do is pray for folks. And that's something you're big on too. I know that every Thursday, I don't know how many people know this, but yourself and Michael Rood's wife, Anna Lil, will stay here late and you will pray over the whole building.
Yep.
Wow.
And our partners, we do that on Sundays as well. We fast and pray, and pray over the ministry, pray over our partners, and it's just an honor, really.
Well, thank you for doing that. We all appreciate it. We all see it. We all appreciate it. We see that you're getting ready to pray, and we get out of your way, and you and Anna Lil just go to it. So we just love that about you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Now, we have some prayer, speaking of prayers, we have some prayer requests from some partners that you've brought along with us today. Who are we going to be thinking of today?
She has been on my heart, actually. Her name is Rita.
Okay.
She's a reverend. She's Reverend Rita, and she's been sent to the hospital as of late with problems with her heart, and they can't figure it out. So I just want to lift her up. And also another lady, Sally, she's decided to go purely plant-based and believe the Father will heal her of a brain tumor.
Okay.
So we want to pray for her. And
I've seen that happen, by the way.
I know.
Stage 4 brain cancer. I've seen it.
David also has been healed of a brain tumor, David Robinson. So I know that God is not a respecter of persons, and He can heal these people and meet them right where they're at. There's people with burdens for their children, people needing jobs. It's just across the board. People are needing answered prayers.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, we should pray for those folks today. So Rita and Sally and Mark is under spiritual attack, he says, and he's So he's slipping into things he does not want to slip back into. So we will pray for that as well. Okay.
Sounds good.
Well, why don't you join us in prayer? Yehovah, we want to thank you for this day. We want to thank you for all these folks who write into us. We want to think of Rita, especially, Father, where she is having troubles with her heart, and doctors can't figure it out, but you can figure it out. You are the great physician, and we know that you already have an answer. And we pray that you would give the doctors that answer that they need in order to help Rita. And even more than that, Father, if she can just walk out of that hospital without any more problems, that would be even better. And so we pray for whatever outcome that you wish for her, Father, and that hearts would be changed in that whole process. And also for Sally, Father, who's struggling with this brain tumor, and she wants to adopt the diet that is in your word and back in Genesis, that I've seen so many people use to heal themselves, using your word and believing on you and reducing their stress and just relying on you, not worrying about things and just turning to your word and to you for your answers. And I've seen it turn around. And I am just believing that it can turn around for Sally as well. And we pray that you would guide her and give good people in her way to help guide her in that. And also for Mark, Father, who feels like he is not living the way he should and giving into things he shouldn't give into. And we pray that you would strengthen him, that you would just isolate him and just bring him to yourself so that you can just nurture him and strengthen him so that he can go back out into the world and not be tempted by those things and know that you are his everything, and that's all he needs. And so we thank you for these folks, Father, and we just pray that any other folks that have needs, that you would meet them where they're at watching this program in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, thanks, Angie.
You're welcome.
All right, well, coming up, we have Andrew Jones joining Michael Rood and friends for a very special episode on Noah's Ark. There's some new information that has come about, and they want to tell you all about it. Very, very exciting stuff that proves that the Bible is true. If you have friends that are naysayers, get them to watch this program because it is going to blow their mind. Now, if you like what you're seeing and you'd like to continue passing it around to friends and such, our love gift is one of the best ways to support the program. Here's a way to do it. Check a look.
In this month's Love Gift teaching, the apostles have been teaching the message of Yeshua all over the map. As new apostles, they are still navigating the ministry that has been given to them by Yeshua in the Great Commission.
They had no idea when the Holy Spirit was sending them on this mission that they were going to be embroiled in such a demonic attack and that they were going to be victors.
In Sword of Division, Michael Rood breaks down the ministry of Paul even further, looking at how he persevered through trial after trial while taking his message to the world. While the Pharisees remained determined to keep Israel in the bondage of Pharisaical law, Paul and the other apostles were determined to show the world another way.
Yeshua is accused of breaking the Sabbath. He is not breaking the Sabbath. It's the rabbinic Jews that are accusing him of it because he is breaking their rules and regulations that they made up, which they are not allowed to do.
Sword of Division is an exclusive teaching available only in April. It's a gift from Michael Rood to you for your love gift donation of just $50. Or with a love gift donation of $100 or more, we'll send you Sword of Division plus a sword and shield pendant on a braided leather necklace. Get the Sword of Division teaching and the sword and shield pendant with braided leather necklace, a constant reminder of God's protection in the midst of our trials.
The signs and wonders happen so that people's attention is brought to the fact that the words of these brothers, Paul and Barnabas, that they are the truth, they're to be listened to, because nobody can do the miracles that they are doing except God is with them.
Call 800-788-7887 to make your love gift donation now and receive the Sword of Division collection, or visit our website at monthlylovegift.com. Hurry, offer ends April 30th.
Traditions that we inherited from Babylon through Constantine have us occasionally with a little plastic cup and a little round wafer in a church service having what is called communion. But Yeshua was not having communion with his disciples. It was the last meal before his crucifixion, which happened at the time the Passover lambs were being sacrificed the following morning. Yeshua took this opportunity to explain something that had been embedded in the Israelite culture for then over 1,000 years. Melchizedek brought forth bread and wine to Abraham, and he blessed the Most High, saying, Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, ha'motzi lechem min ha'aretz. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. Yeshua said, this represents my body, which will be broken for you. As often as you do it in remembrance of me. And so we break this bread and we do it in remembrance of him. Likewise, Yeshua took the cup and he blessed the Most High with that blessing that Melchizedek blessed the Most High. Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, borei pari hagafen. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, the King of the universe, the creator of the fruit of the vine. Yeshua said, this represents my shed blood, which will be poured out for the remission of sin. I will not drink another drop of the fruit of the vine. You take my cup and divide it among yourselves, because I won't drink it until I drink it again with you in my Father's kingdom. The marriage supper of the Lamb, Yeshua will lift this cup and he will say, L'chaim, to life everlasting. And until then, we remember what he's done and remember that marriage supper of the Lamb. Get ready. Ladies and gentlemen, this series on Shabbat Night Live, I consider to be the most important in my life. There is no one that has impacted my life more dramatically and changed the course of my ministry more than Ron Wyatt. Ron Wyatt literally changed my life, and he has changed the lives of millions of people around the world. Now I get to tell the story. It was 25 years ago. I was finishing a seminar in the state of Oregon, and a pastor came up to me at the end of the meeting that day and said, they found Pharaoh's chariots and army strewn for 1.5 miles on the bottom of the Red Sea, and we've got it on video. I looked at him trying to hide my skepticism, because I do believe the Bible, but this seemed to be way too far out there, that they actually found Pharaoh's chariots. I asked him if he had a video, something, and he said he would bring a video the next day and he would show it to me. And so I took it home that next night. And I stayed up all night long. I watched it over and over and over again until 5 a.m. And I sat there in that chair weeping. And I said, this is the greatest evangelistic tool that I have ever had in my life. It is a tool. And I said, why has this not spread like wildfire through the Christian church? And that was soon to be answered, because I realized that I considered it a tool because I was attempting to change people's lives and to change the world and to bring people to a knowledge of the gospel of the kingdom. And most Christians aren't even interested in that. They don't need a tool if they're just sitting there and think that they've accomplished something by doing a repeat after me prayer and getting a Gospel of John and then living life as normal. But I knew that if this is true, this changes everything. And so I set out on a mission to find out if this is all true. Then I had to get involved. I had to speak this very message. I had to take the information I saw on this video in this hour and a half, because I knew that this could change the world. And it does, even to this day. Last night, I went out for a walk, a 5-mile walk, and I listened again. After several years, I listened to that very same recording on YouTube, Ron Wyatt's discoveries that he presented to the End Time Handmaidens meeting. And at the end of that, I had walked an hour and a half, and a young girl came up along beside me. She was walking a little bit faster than I was at the end of this walk, and she engaged me in conversation. And we began talking, and I was telling her about Noah's Ark. The very things that I've been telling because of the discoveries of Ron Wyatt, that even to this day, there's not a day that goes by that this does not impact me. And in turn, that conversation with her went on for 45 minutes. And I knew that today that I would be able to bring this story to the world. And so for me, it's been a short 25 years, but there have been people that have been involved a lot longer than that. And I get to introduce them to you today. We have Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones first got involved when he was just in junior high. We have Randall Lee that now is involved with Andrew, and they are going to Mount Ararat together, excavating on the Temple Mount. And then we have the woman that supported Ron Wyatt, that I heard her voice doing the narration of this. We have with us Mary Nell Wyatt Lee. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome them to the program. Andrew, I'm going to start with you.
Yes.
You were around before me. You were in junior high at the time. I was long out of junior high, long out of the Marine Corps, but you got involved in this first. I want you to go first to give your background. Then we're going to have you introduce the rest of the people here at the dais today.
Sounds good. Well, yeah, as you mentioned, I was just a kid in junior high in Northern California. And one evening, my dad told me that a person was coming to a local church. His name was Ron Wyatt, and he was going to do a one-night seminar on biblical archaeology. And so I was interested in archaeology at the time and history, but it was a school night, so my dad went for me. And he came back and said, this one man claimed he found everything. And I was interested. I wanted to find out all the facts and find out what his story was. And so I went to a bookstore and bought his book. It said, Discover Noah's Ark. Mm-hmm. And then I got the courage to find his phone number. Back then, there was no internet, so I'd call 411, and I asked if there was a Ronald Wyatt in Madison, Tennessee. And the operator found a phone number, and when I called, Ron actually picked up the phone. And I had tons of questions. So since that time, from the early 90s until he passed away, I would call their house a lot and talk to him and Mary Nell as a kid going through junior high and high school and college with many questions. And I would call other people who was involved with the work. And then after that, I was able to finally go to the site in 1997 and see Noah's Ark for the first time. And then later, I went on an archaeological dig where I met Randall. And this was in 2003. We're in Jerusalem, and we became good friends since then on many trips across the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, climbing Mount Sinai, to Nuweiba and the Red Sea crossing, to Noah's Ark, which we're talking about tonight.
So you started out basically with the same information that Ron had found Noah's Ark that had been established by the Turkish government at that time, Sodom and Gomorrah.
At that time, all I had was the book. There was no videos out yet, and the newsletters weren't even out yet.
That's right. That goes back so far. Incredible. Let's hear from Randall how you got involved with this.
Michael, I have to thank you because I was in a meeting in Dallas, Texas, and where you were teaching. And after the meeting, I went back, and there on the table was a VHS tape. It said "Discoveries of Ron Wyatt," and it had all these discoveries listed. And it's just like I didn't know what that was, but I decided I'd take that home and try that. Well, I don't watch videos much, so I stuck the thing up by my TV, and it took me about 4 months to really get back around. And I said, and then see it again. And I said, well, I'm just going to put this in and see what's going on. Well, then immediately when I watched it, I had to go see what I could. And so I immediately booked a trip to Noah's Ark, and all the information I had was whatever was on the tape, and it didn't tell you exactly how to get there. And so when I finally arrived in Dubaisit, and I found out that no one knew English, and I had to kind of stumble around, and I finally found someone that could take me out there. And so I got involved with all the discoveries of reading and watched as much as I could. And then we found out there was a dig coming up in 2003 in Jerusalem. And so that's where I met the love of my life. Mary Nell was on the dig there, of course, and so that's where I met my wife, that we got married the next year. And so I've been involved with the discoveries ever since. And I have to tell you, there would be no Ron Wyatt without Mary Nell, because she has, he did the stuff, but he would bring home the pictures and put them here and there. And Mary Nell came in and organized everything, put all the videos together, put all this stuff that you see today. Anything you see, Mary Nell put it together. Yeah. And so she has all the information, and she knows everything that's gone on through all those years. And it's been a tremendous work, and she's given up her life, really, to promote these discoveries. And I just want to give her credit for the hard work that she's done.
Well, let's now introduce Mary Nell Wyatt. This is the first time you have been behind the scenes all these decades. We've been hearing your voice as Ron takes us. You've actually, even the things from Jim and Penny Caldwell, which Ron gave me and told me he wouldn't tell me who the people were because their lives were in danger, but yet I'm hearing your voice narrating all this. It's true. If it weren't for Mary Nell, we wouldn't have any of these things. We can be thankful for Ron for digging the holes, and all we're doing is reporting. That's all I'm doing is reporting. You guys have actually been out there. You've been on these digs. You've been to Noah's Ark. You've been in Jerusalem on these digs. Mary Nell, you've got a lifetime of experience to tell us about. Take it away. Take it away. We're right here on the cusp of going back to Mount Ararat, and by the end of this program, ladies and gentlemen, by the end of this program, you're going to find out that the permits have been authorized, and there is going to be an excavation of Noah's Ark in northern Turkey, and that's all I'm going to tell you right now, because by the end, aren't we going to invite people to participate in that, Andrew?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so we're holding off because by the end of this series, you are going to be able to register if you would like to participate in an actual dig on Noah's Ark. And so, Mary Nell, please.
Well, thank you, Michael, so much for having us here, because it means a lot. Ron has passed away in 1999, and it has seemed like, for me, it's been, what do I do now? My story, my introduction to all of this is I became a committed Christian late in life. I was, I think, 37, and I was a stockbroker, and everyone in the office saw a difference in me. And to make a long story short, one man said, "Hey, I know the man who found Noah's Ark." And my story is so much like everyone else's. And I said, really? And I said, "Can you call him and see, does he have a book? Does he have anything?" Because I was very interested in archaeology, just like everyone else. And he said he didn't have anything. And so one day he walked into my office, and I knew he didn't belong there. This was a brokerage firm. Everyone had on suits and white shirts, and Ron came in with that long white beard, and he was wrinkled, and he said, "I heard from a man in your office that there was someone here who wanted to hear about Noah's Ark." And so he came over and he talked to the people in my office for 2 hours, as long as he had money in his in his parking meter. And my life was changed. I didn't see anything except a small picture that he had. And it was literally very small.
Let me ask you something, Mary.
Yes.
Now, this, to me, is the epitome of Ron Wyatt's ministry. One person at a time,
Yes.
using everything that he found, not to glorify himself, but
Right.
to minister to just one person, and
Yes.
to do it so intently. You see, if there's anything that's good about me, it's that which I really have absorbed from Ron. He was a loving person. He loved people, and he poured his heart out to every individual. And I saw him do it to homeless people that he picked up alongside the road and fed them, and then gave them a bus ticket. And it was just that was Ron. And I want people to understand that very thing. And this is what drew you in right to begin with. He paid for his own coins in the meter, and he spent all this time with you.
Yeah, he did. And I went home that day, and I told my daughter my life was changed, because Ron, when he talked, it was the first time in my life I had ever heard anyone talk about Jesus Christ as a real person.
Yeah.
My life changed. And I decided I wanted to go to Noah's Ark, just like you did.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't figure out how to get there, and so a man in my office called him for me and said, "How do you get there?" Excuse me. And Ron said, was telling him names of cities, and this man who was calling him for me said, "Here, talk to her." So I took the phone, and all I heard was, "You can't go out there, you're a girl, it's dangerous." And my heart sank. And so he said, "But I tell you what," this was April 15th that he came to see us in 1988. And he said, "In the end of May, I'm taking a group over there, and I've just found out that the man that was going to help me with the radar can't go. So if you can take directions, if you can afford it, and if you can stay out of the way, you can go with us." And I said, "Oh, please, yes, I can do all of those things." So I made the arrangements, and he called me one day, and I was mortified of him, because I thought he was just unlike anybody. I don't mean mortified, but I was nervous around him the first time. And the second time he said, "I'm going to Georgia to work on the radar. Can you come go with me so I can teach you how to help me?" And I said, "Okay." And he picked me up. This is the second time I've seen him. And we're going down there, and he shows me how to help him work the radar. And we're coming home, and he's telling me the story of his life. And it was without a doubt the saddest thing I'd ever heard. I mean, I won't go into any details, but I started crying, and I said, "Why are you telling me this?" Because it was private details. Mm-hmm. And it was at that point that he said, "Because if we're going to be married, you need to know these things." That's exactly how it happened.
Yeah.
And I was stunned. He told me, he said, "I'm sorry, I should have told you that I have been divorced, single for 18 years doing this work, and I need help." And I prayed and asked God to send me someone. And he said, "When I saw you in that office, I knew it was you." Yeah. I didn't know it. But that was it.
Yeah, you know, that's when you said that, that you know, he spoke to about Jesus like he really knew him,
Yes.
and that is really what you get from Ron, because he did know him, you know, in a very personal, intimate way, and he answered Ron's prayer, and you were the answer to that prayer at that point in time, and. You know, what a wild ride it has been.
It has been. It's been, well, amazingly, my family, even my ex-husband, I talked to him and told him the story because Ron would be living in the home with my daughter, and I had to talk to my ex-husband, and I told him the story. And he said, well, if this is what you believe, he says, I trust you. And of course, he came to like Ron very much, and everyone did. But it was something that my friends and family, I'm sure, thought I had, you know, was a bit touched in the head at times. But it gave my life meaning. I had meaning to my life. I knew that God had a work for me to do, and I did it the best I could, and it wasn't easy. And I wouldn't trade anything for all of that.
How much pressure you were under. See, you know, as I began getting this information out myself, then I ended up with, in just a few weeks, a 3-ring binder, 3-inch 3-ring binder full of anti-Ron Wyatt literature.
Yes.
And so I went through this because, you know, the skeptics, the people that are out there, because they're raising money to find Noah's Ark on top of a 17,000-foot post-blood volcano, that, and all of the frauds that had gone on out there, saying they were going after Noah's Ark, well, they had to all poo-poo anything that Ron did. And so I had all this stuff, and so I was a skeptic. I was really seriously looking at this, and I know that all of us had to go through that very same thing ourselves. But you all ended up going to the mountains of Urartu and seeing these very things. And so we're going to have to take a break for just a minute. But then when we come back, I'd like for you to take me on a journey back in time, back to where Ron first woke up to this. I believe it was a Life magazine, an article there that first sparked his interest, and then the rest is history. So we're going to be back right after this word for our sponsors. You are our sponsors. With every teaching series that I do, every teaching on Shabbat Night Live, every one of them, I have to sit back and I am so thankful for those of you who have stood with me. I have people that have stood with me for literally decades to help get this message out to the world. And because they stood with me, we are able to continue preaching the gospel of the kingdom that Yeshua taught. This is not a greasy grace, sloppy agape. We're not teaching sweet baby Jesus stories. No, we're teaching the gospel of the kingdom. Yeshua said, make disciples, teach them what I taught you. It's not an easy message. A lot of the world doesn't want to hear it. They don't want to hear anything from the prophet they must hear and obey. They want to ignore it. They want to muffle it all up with their religion. But we are not doing that, ladies and gentlemen. We are doing faithfully what I was called to do and have been doing faithfully for more than 50 years. I'm asking you to stand with us. I want to again thank all of you who have made this episode possible. Now, whenever the rest of you are watching this, I want you to step up. Please put a shoulder to the load. Help us get out to the world. These are your 2 minutes. That's all I'm giving you, and then we'll be back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Mary Nell Wyatt Lee, Randall Lee, and Andrew Jones, and we are going to go to the mountains of Urartu, unlike what the King James Version says, Mount Ararat. No, it's the mountains of Urartu in northern Turkey, and the adventure begins back a long time ago when Ron first started getting an interest in this, or realizing that there may be something still out there. And I have to say, as far as I know, Ron had the greatest command of memorized scripture of any person that I had known at that point. And Ron really was a man of God. He really had a tender heart. And so for him to be able to find these things and see these things, what woke him up to this?
Well, I can't say that Ron found these things. It was actually found, as we can see here, when he opened up this Life magazine from 1960. It told about an expedition out in eastern Turkey and that was investigating a strange boat-shaped object that had been found in an aerial photo. And they said, could this be Noah's Ark? And as Ron read the story, his interest was piqued, but he had 3 young children, I think 2 young children and 1 on the way when this came out. So he couldn't go and do anything at that time. But he believed that this was the most likely candidate to be Noah's Ark, and I'll explain why. He first of all said Urartu, or Ararat. He studied that and found out it was a region in eastern Turkey. And
right, not a specific mountain, but a region, a mountainous region.
Yes, and Mount Ararat is a recent volcanic mountain. The Bible says, and the ark rested in the 7th month on the 17th day of the month upon the mountains, plural, of Ararat. So when he studied this, he realized that it made sense that the ark would come to rest in a Cretaceous mountain. And Mount Ararat, while it's in a wide plain, the Araxes Plain, the mountains around it are Cretaceous and water-laid. So as he studied Mount Ararat and saw that it was a stratovolcano, he realized there's no way anything could land on that mountain. Plus, it's very high. In this picture right here, you can see its last volcanic eruption in the late 1800s blew out a portion of the mountain a lot like Mount St. Helens. Had the ark even been there, it could not have survived.
Now, I have to point out that while I was in Bible school and seminary, this was after I was in the Marine Corps, and the Sun Pictures Noah's Ark came out at that time, and that was later found to be fraud, that the people that said they brought pieces of Noah's Ark down actually took a lumber and they soaked it in fruit juices and baked it, and so there have been a lot of false things, false flags thrown up there, and so, it's like when it really looks like we've got something, it's like people have been inoculized by satanic inspiration and liars to make money in order to put this down. And as you pointed out, Ron didn't find this. He didn't find it, but he seriously considered this, and whereas everyone else was willing to dismiss it because they don't believe the Bible's true. Ron was different. He believes the Bible is true.
Yes, he did. And so when he read the Genesis account, he realized the author of Genesis, being Moses, it says Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and deed. The Hebrew cubit, which came along later when there was a Hebrew nation, would have made the ark 450 feet. But the article said that this boat-shaped site was around 500 feet. And that was what first caught his attention, because the royal Egyptian cubit that would have been in existence during the time of Moses was 515 feet. 300 royal Egyptian cubits would be 515 feet. And here you can see the cubic rod from King Tut's tomb. And So this is what piqued his interest, but he had to wait until his children were older. And finally the time came in 1977 when the boys, Ronnie and Danny, as you can see in this picture, they're both, let's see, it looks like Ronnie is leaning on a rock and Danny is standing to the side, and they were teenagers, but they wanted to go. And this was one of the first photographs. Now, I don't have enough time to really tell the whole story, but I will say that as Ron came into the region, he had no idea where to look, none whatsoever. And he prayed, and the taxi stalled 3 times coming into town. And him and the boys got out each time and stacked up rocks. He says, I don't know why we're doing this, but I'm impressed to do it. And so what you're seeing on the screen now, this photo was from the first pile of rocks when they walked out from the road. They found these strange-looking stones that had crosses carved on them. And this is an actual picture of Ron from '77. He was attacked. Him and the boys were attacked while they were there by thugs who stole everything, and he got away with very little footage and video. I mean, not video, but 8mm film. But these pictures he did get out with. And over the course of time, Ron has found quite a number of these. When I first went out, well, that's maybe my 3rd or 4th time out there, I drew up these in diagrams so they could be seen better. But what was so interesting was not only their size, their massive size, but the holes in them were scooped out. And Ron theorized that these were drogue stones, not anchor stones, not intended to be an anchor to hold a boat anywhere, but he believed that they were used on Noah's Ark to hold the nose into the waves, that God provided wisdom in giving Noah the knowledge on how to build this ark. And as it came into the area, you'll recall that in the biblical story it talks about the water being so many feet high and so many feet high. Well, how would Noah have known this except he was able to use these as soundings that they snagged as they came into the region. And there's, excuse me.
Yeah, I've lived the last 14 years on the Sea of Galilee, right above it, and on my porch I have several were used as anchor stones that are done this very same way, so that the rope is not worn away, with the knot slipping inside. So when you're showing this, I can relate directly to this as the anchor stones that were used on the fishing vessels, but you're saying drogue stones to keep the boat facing into the waves.
That was what Ron believed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There was a lot of criticism. Oh, these are tombstones, because they have the crosses carved on them. And Ron did find a number of other stones that were still buried in the mud. And when they were uncovered, they did not have the crosses carved on them.
Okay.
So they were carved by later people.
In fact, this last year when I was there, we found a new anchor stone, drogue stone, that had no crosses on it. And we'll show that in one of the upcoming programs on the series.
Okay.
Brand new.
So yeah, the crosses, this is a Byzantine period. So, they're obviously they identified, they recognized these. And so how many crosses did they have on these stones?
Almost all of them had 8 crosses. The largest one was Noah, the second largest one was his wife, then the 3 sons, then the 3 daughters-in-law.
Wow.
And so some of them people had carved extras on later. But this is a very in-depth subject, so I'm going to move on to when he finally saw the ark for the first time.
Okay.
He kept walking, and finally he followed one pile, and then he saw this strange boat-shaped formation. And it is not easy to see. I can see why it was not even spotted until the aerial photos. And this is what he saw. And he realized there's no way he can do any he says, I can't do any research on this because it's huge, and I don't know where to begin.
Yeah, it's all buried below the ground.
It's all buried.
Yeah.
And so he went home and asked a number of friends to pray for an earthquake. And there's some of those people still around that remember that. And they did. Jesslyn was one of them. And they prayed for an earthquake. And he thinks it was December of '78 when he heard about an earthquake in eastern Turkey. And he was working as a nurse anesthetist, which was his profession right up until he died. And he arranged to go out there in August after he heard about this earthquake. And this was his very first photo.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. I mean, this is mind-boggling because the earth dropped the soil from around the edge of this formation, and it caused a large crack to be formed right down the middle. And as you look here, you can see it's almost like it just popped up out of the ground. And he was able to take measurements inside that crack. And this is a very exciting thing we'll be talking about in a later show, because he thought that he was measuring all the way down to the bedrock. And what we have discovered from this new testing,
Okay,
be sure, don't miss this one.
There's stuff coming up, ladies and gentlemen. We've been waiting a lifetime to see what's going to happen, and so you're giving them the background to this, but there's breaking stuff that caused the Turkish government to go ballistic on this.
Yep. So I'm going to move through rapidly because a lot of you may already know this information, but just to cover it briefly, this was Ron's favorite picture. And because it was, this was several years after that, but that was his favorite picture. And here you can see the remains of rib timbers along the side. And I show this picture so you can get an idea of the basic idea of what you're looking at, the ribs. In this picture, you're seeing the internal structure of a ship they're building, and what I'd like to draw your attention to is in the back, going across this way, is what you would call deck joists. They will build a deck on top of those. And what Ron saw at Noah's Ark, he believed, were the remains of broken deck joists, where the ark had collapsed, and these joists broke off where there had been a floor to that ship. And here's some more of them. Right here, in a line going up the side of the ark, were the remains of petrified wood that he believed were also timbers that held up a deck. And so here you can see where they were. Here's another one of a deck joist sticking out. And what he saw back then, he knew was nothing that was natural. These pictures are not natural because there's a pattern to them. There's,
So there you can see the difference between the petrified timbers and then perhaps the mud flow that filled up.
Exactly.
So they're very pronounced there, and they protrude up above as well.
And this picture's before what happened is after it popped up or the soil dropped away, it began to erode. So some of these are eroding now. You can see they're going away quickly. But this is one of the first things that he found where you can see these timbers are sticking, they're solid, they're there, there's shape to them. And this right here is the first picture that he took of what turned out to be a rivet. And we'll talk more on that later. But I want to explain one thing. Back before Ron ever came to Turkey, he did experiments in a lake. He built rock formations to see what would cause a ship to come into a mountain and land. And he discovered that a mountain sticking out of the ground out of the water like this, a boat would not go into it, it would go around it, water displacement. But he discovered that if he built a crescent shape, that the water, the eddy, would pull the ship in. And so when he saw the boat shape, he looked up above the mountain and he found a similar boat shape up there. It's a crescent shape of mountains. And when he was up there, he found remains of an ancient, settlement of some sort, which he believed he found the bottom, 120-foot section of the bottom of what he believed was the ark. And he believed that what happened was the ark was set up there. There's a spent volcano up there that John Larson has identified that erupted, carried the ship down the mountain in lava where it hit a rock, which impaled it. It swung around in line with the lava flow, and it was there for a long time after the lava hardened. Now, also, while Ron was up there, he found these very strange specimens, and he stuck that in his pocket. It felt like, here is that specimen right here, and that is a very, very important specimen, because he drove out in 1983 to meet Colonel Jim Irwin, and he took this specimen.
Now, Jim Irwin, he's the moon astronaut, is he not?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he wanted to talk to Jim because he knew that he went out there and worked on looking for Noah's Ark. And while Jim was not interested in Ron's site, he was kind enough to take this specimen right here.
Let me see this valuable specimen here.
Feels it's metallic feeling, and it's very heavy.
Very heavy.
And Jim Irwin took it to a friend of his at Los Alamos National Labs, where they tested it. And that friend was a man by the name of John Baumgardner. And Dr. Baumgardner did very good testing on this, and here is the analysis of it. It has a high 41% of titanium. It's got 0% iron in it. It's got manganese. It's got, let's see, I'm not sure what some of these are, but the aluminum, it's got aluminum in it. It's got things in there that we did not know how to alloy in our, post-flood world until the 20th century. And this caused a lot of interest.
And it does specify in the Bible that Tubal-Cain was an artificer in brass. And so alloys, man-made alloys, they knew about this before the flood. Right. And so here it is, obvious. Now, this led some people to believe that maybe this was a crashed UFO or something just because of the titanium in it. We have to go a long time in the future for us to have titanium in our day and time.
That's true. One of the men who came out there later from Los Alamos told Ron that some of the people who worked on this testing believed that a missile had crashed out there, and that old Tennessee boy thought it was Noah's Ark, which Ron thought that was pretty cute. But that was one of the very first, very strong positive evidences. This was something else that Ron had found way up at the top, just above where he believed the ark settled. He found a stele with an inscription on it. And he didn't get photos of it while it was still in one piece, but it looked like the ridge, the ravens, and a boat shape with 8 people in it. And here is from that particular vantage point showing it. And when Ron was able to relocate it, it had been busted up into pieces. And anyhow, you can see some of the pieces here. The military is actually using it for a border marker. And I'm hoping that I can be with y'all when you go up there and relocate this, Andrew and Randall. Well, I want to go.
Well, I think this is exemplary of what Andrew saw down at Mount Sinai, which is another place that Ron is noted to have secured the evidence of that first. But they have been protecting this under armed guard to keep people from defiling it and busting it all up. And so we're very thankful to the Saudi government for protecting this site. And now we're getting access to this so it can be shown. So ladies and gentlemen, we have so much more. This is just the beginning of this. And so we want you to join us again next week on Shabbat Night Live, because we are going to take this the rest of the way. And by the end of this series, you too are going to be able to register, if you so qualify, to go on a dig for Noah's Ark. So we're going to say shalom for now, peace and tranquility. May Yehovah bless and keep you. May Yehovah make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yehovah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace, in the name of Yeshua, the Prince of Peace. Amen and amen. Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. Shavua Tov. Have a good week, and we'll see you back here next week for the rest of the story on Noah's Ark. See you then.
you.